Welcome to Autism Knows No Borders, a podcast where people connected to autism inspire change and build community. Together with the Global Autism Project, I'm your host, Rachel Harmon, a professional with over a decade of experience in the field of autism services, outreach, and advocacy. Do you find it challenging to be surrounded by too many people? What do you prefer, spending time alone or with others? Or do you just struggle to make deeper connections? If any of this resonates with you or anyone you know, stick around for today's episode. The following roundtable is about isolation versus community. It was facilitated by Autistic self-advocate and Global Autism Community moderator Hattie-Angelys Fox, and it features Autistic self-advocates Adrian Sanchez and Eren Niederhoffer. Among other things, they discuss isolation as a restorative choice, the dual nature of isolation, how slowing down can help you to understand yourself, tools to balance community and self-care, navigating social situations, and the role of humor in connecting with others, public spaces as a neutral ground for social interactions, trust as a prerequisite to meaningful relationships, cultural sensitivity and communication, the importance of self-time for mental and emotional well-being, and observing social dynamics to enhance one's ability to connect. In this episode, discover what's possible when social engagement and self-care are balanced. And now, I present you the Global Autism Community.
This month's theme was the concept of community and isolation and what that might look like and feel like for everyone. I consider isolation almost a synonym to being alone, but I don't look at either as necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. I think that involuntary alone time or isolation or forcible alone time or isolation both have the detrimental effects that you were speaking to. But I am in the Catskill Mountains and it's a very rural area. There's larger pieces of property, so there's much more space between each home. And it can feel very isolated, but I'm choosing this. And so for me, it's a really restorative choice. It allows for my sensory system to relax a little bit. And like you said, time to explore things that I'm choosing for myself, whether that's reading or crafting or walking or like whatever I want to do at that time. And so it isn't a bad thing. I look at a lot of aspects of the human experience that they're not necessarily good or they're not necessarily bad, but it's a matter of, are you choosing it? Because if it's something that you're not selecting for yourself in that moment, even what might be textbook healthy can be damaging, right? Like we'll say like, oh, people need people. We have to socialize at a certain rate and level. Like that can be overstimulating. That can be overwhelming. That can be overly demanding. And without a break from it, that can be equally harmful for me. But I don't know if you feel those things.
I definitely do. Oftentimes you just feel the need to be alone to just reconnect with those feelings. And if you're in a noisy environment, then it can be pretty hard to do that. But at the same time, there is time to build a community in between that.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Do you want to speak about what community building looks like for you, or would you like me to do that first?
With community building, it's really about what you need to identify with yourself first in order to know which community is the right one. And if you're just choosing one just to feel like you want to fit in, then you're basically putting more stress level on that because that would increase the ability to just be masking more. But there's nothing wrong with being open-minded and hearing everyone's opinions and going off of that. If there's something relatable, then there are some things in that community that would be good for you in order to be more open-minded to other options.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with all of that. And I love that you started with really knowing yourself. I'm a person that has multiple human labels, whether we're talking racial, ethnic, age, and in all the different ways that we could define someone. I was just recently speaking with one of my children about saying, sometimes I talk to people who have the same neurotype as me, because it helps me to identify certain opportunities for growth or ways that might work better for me. Sometimes I talk to parents because of the same thing, or any of my human titles. And I have community in each one of the human titles that I can personally identify. That doesn't mean I'm always connected to those communities, but oftentimes that's a choice. Like, I'm an equestrian. I love riding horses, but I'm raising my children and I have taken a big step back from that community. It doesn't mean I don't have people who I can reach out to inside of it. I have a friend who owns a barn. I can very quickly rebuild that part of my humanity, but I let go of it so that I had more space and opportunity to do the thing that I had chosen, which was parent my children. So I think that it's important that we know ourselves. And I love also that you talked about exposure to other people, their perspectives, their lived experience. The same person who owns the horse barn that I love to ride at, she's a different age than I am. She's a different profession than I do. She's a different quantity of children than I do. And there's a lot of aspects of her life that are very different than my own. And by holding that community together, the things that we're alike in, we enjoy our space and time together, and we get to share the things that are different. So I learn different things. Her kids are of different ages. Her children are adults. So she's a great person to kind of talk to about what I might need to do. Or she's a business owner and her business is much, much bigger than mine. So I can speak about those things, and it helps me, I think, to be better at my choices. So I love that you kind of talked about all of that. I noticed earlier, one of the things you mentioned is that need to slow down in order to kind of get in touch with yourself. And it reminded me of what we talked about in the first week, or one of the things I was bringing forward. As an educator, I'm trained in a number of different teaching theories. And one of them is Waldorf. And in the Waldorf education pedagogy, we talk about in-breaths and out-breaths. When we're designing instruction for children, I want things to have something to be very energetic, something to help them slow back down, something to be maybe pouring a lot of knowledge into them, and then some way that they can express and create. And so it's this constant daily give and take, or that balance. Is there ways that you find you notice when you need to be more stimulated, maybe more in touch with community, or when it's time for you to settle down? Do you have like a good set of cueing that helps you, or are there tools that you incorporate to help you make sure that you're balancing well?
Well, once you hear something that's very relatable, especially during a conversation, it's important to chime in with what you experienced during that conversation with your own input. It's all about following the news around and chain of events. And if you feel the need to speak up, it's important to just do that. And if you just want to stay silent a long time, that's pretty much an indication that too much anxiety has pretty much prevented you from not wanting to say anything because it's being too exhausting lately.
So you're really in tune with your markers of fatigue or social stress, and also your personal indicators of like this desire to self-express. I love that. Eren, is there anything that you'd like to add to like kind of where you come from in understanding when you want to connect more, or where you might feel like it's time, you're in a time of your life or day or whatever that means it's time to slow down and really get in touch with yourself, more of your internal emotions or your sensory needs, or just the ability to slow down and get some rest?
Basically, for me, I try to just drink coffee so I can interact with people or take part in activities. And it's just when I get home, that's when I give myself rest.
Okay. That's definitely makes a lot of sense too. Stimulants do a lot for neurodivergent brains and help us in a lot of different ways. So I definitely understand that coffee drive. I too can utilize it as a tool to help make the things that I want to occur in my life occur. I struggle to be in touch with my emotions when I'm surrounded by a lot of community. I also struggle with my introspection when I'm surrounded by a lot of community. I can become very gregarious and very enlivened. And I might not even notice where Adrian says, like, he experiences that desire to not talk or not communicate. I don't have that experience. So I have to forcibly slow down. I have to consider time limits, or I have to plan ahead, or I need timers to say, like, oh, go take a break. I can even lose a sense of needing to drink or needing to eat if I'm too overstimulated by what I'm enjoying too. I like sharing and connecting. So it can be hard for me. Do you have any of those experiences, or have you observed them in other people that you've connected with?
I would say that I actually seem to be able to get into a mode where I can focus.
Okay. I have friends who are like that. Do you feel like you have enough community for all of the different experiences you have in life, whether it's professional, personal interests, hobbies? Do you feel like you have the connections that you want inside of those things?
I feel like I don't have enough.
Mm. And Adrian, you were seeing with family, it could be a little challenging, but in other places, do you feel like you do?
I feel like there's common ground in both family members and coworkers and friends. They're all not going to be the exact same, but at the same time, there's plenty of time to do some prep work and thinking about what they are talking about, as well as to think about different types of situations that were related to situations that they talk about as well. And I feel as though there's plenty of time to be able to, before the meter goes up, for you to be able to put yourself back into the situation in which you can feel free to build in the community as an individual, in order to not feel like you're the odd one out. But in this case, it's pretty good as an adult.
I love
And
that.
with adults, more anxiety has risen with more responsibility.
Yeah, I can feel the social pressures of having responsibility. It's interesting. I have many neurotypical people in my various communities, and I hear them also talk about loneliness and a difficult time connecting. And I wonder how much of it has to do with social media, the internet age, and COVID kind of all coalescing at the same time. Do either of you have any thoughts on that?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
That makes a lot of sense to me also, because there's many times that in my life and over the course of my life, I'm not sure why something didn't work the way I expected it to. I really like what Adrian said, though, about taking that time to reflect and think back and see if I can identify ways that I can do better in terms of providing the opportunity for other people to share the things that matter to them. I don't think I'm always as good about that as I'd like to be. And I kind of think that brings us to the next idea is, do you feel like you know how to connect with others and build more relationships around either profession or interest or hobby or some other aspect of human identifier, culture, gender, age, whatever would be of value to you?
I believe so.
Could you share something that you think that might be really helpful that maybe someone else might not have thought of?
Bringing different people together in a environment like a restaurant rather than an apartment or house, to where they can meet with other people in a controlled, rule structured environment that allows them to eat while talking with others and feeling safe.
Mm, that's a really good idea. Adrian, do you feel like you do?
I feel like it really helps if I just accept any invitation that's thrown at me. And then once getting to the social event, I can chime in conversations, but it doesn't have to be like a full conversation like all the time if it feels like it's unrelated. Oftentimes you can just use one-liners and indicate that you are paying attention. Because if there's one thing that other people love is that they love to be listened to. And if you throw in some words that indicates that you are understanding based on what they're talking about, then they will appreciate what you are listening to and they will feel free to ask you some more questions. But either way, I feel like in today's society, with the rise of social media, there's other people that will chime in with their own opinions as well, especially if it's a long subtext and post that expresses your point of views. And from then on, community will build.
Eren, I love that you talked about bringing people together. I love connecting people. It's one of my favorite things to do. Why do you feel like a restaurant is better than a home or a house, apartment, whatever?
People get anxious around an individual's apartment where the individual themselves is able to enforce their will as the host of the house or as the owner. There may be difficult to leave. They may not feel safe in someone else's house. They don't know the person originally. But at a restaurant, they have the ability to leave at any time. They don't feel threatened. There's a lot of public people, so they can feel safe in such an environment.
I hadn't considered all of those variables, and I feel like they're so important. A public place offers so much more neutrality, and listening to what you said, I realize how many times that's been really helpful for me. Adrian, you mentioned building community on social media and the fact that if you especially post lengthy things, individuals will usually chime in. Are you successful in translating some of those social media connections to being more personal, maybe a DM'd relationship where you're talking about your lives more, or even bringing it into the real world?
It usually builds trust in that kind of situation, but it would really depend on how well you know the person once you post something, and then you feel free to earn their trust in order to keep exchanging conversations. But like Eren said, in restaurants, that's a pretty good place where people can just come and go, and they don't even need accounts in order to connect with other people because everyone needs to eat and everyone can sit together in person, and we all know we're real there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I think all of those factors are huge. The trust factor, the way that a person might respond will help determine whether or not you want to continue to maybe have a more personal relationship or intentionally connect more. And Eren's points are all really valid too.
Yeah.
There's definitely benefits to both types of environments, right? In a social media or an internet-based connection, I can choose when it's right for me to answer or if I want to answer at all. However, as what Eren said, a neutral space like a restaurant, we all have to eat. There is no one else's imposed rules other than the social rules of politeness, I guess, to some degree. And we know that everyone's real. You know that you're connecting with a real person. The admins and moderator team, we had talked about this concept of that many people have 10 or less true intimate connections. And by intimate, meaning like truly that you trust with your personal details or problems, or 10 or less people that you're going to call and be like, oh my gosh, this thing happened to me. I'm so happy or I'm so sad. Do you gentlemen feel that you have those deeper connections that you're looking for in different aspects of your life? And if you don't mind sharing, what helped you to access that?
Well, Back in my younger days, I used to be very self-conscious about what other people felt about me. But as I was able to become very successful with my career, I realized that there really is a chance for me to grow, and I shouldn't be ashamed for how I am. The perfect mindset is whether or not I can feel compatible with the other person. And when it comes to relationships, it's very important to not be apologetic for your points of views. And if anything, a good sense of humor is usually the best place to start off with. And if anyone else can reciprocate that sense of humor, then that means conversations will be going pretty fun. Yeah.
What happens if you're able to understand their humor and also help them understand your humor in a way that matters, but not offensively to either party?
Oh, that's a
It's very
really
important
good point.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's just very important to just keep conversations appropriate and just ask questions about what everyone else is doing and what makes them a good person. And you definitely don't want to sound like you're not advocating for what they believe in, because that could create too much controversy during that time. But if you're poking fun at yourself with something that you're not sensitive about, then that will indicate that you're clearly just kidding around in that sense.
I love how logically both of you approached that. I really do. And I think I'd like to slow it down just for anyone who chooses to listen to this as a podcast. I think the first thing is that humor is so connecting. The ability to have fun and experience joy, I can actually say biophysically, does a lot inside of the human brain, and it does build connections. So I love that both of you saw that as super important. I also really liked that Eren brought forward that it's super important that we are understanding what someone else finds funny, so that perspective taking component, and also making sure that we know that they understand when we're playing playful or silly or joking. I think that, Adrian, your response around it being that we have to be careful. I have a lot of friends who have different human identifiers than me, and so I could take cultural as one. There are things that inside of one of my cultures, I am multicultural, is very silly and playful and an appropriate way to joke around. And I know that for a friend of mine, it's not inside of their culture to use the same kind of things. So body image is one. As a Puerto Rican, oftentimes we'll call somebody like a flaca, like it'll be actually my nickname for a very small, thin framed person who I'm friends with. However, were I to try to do that in English, it could be really offensive.
Oh, yeah.
And so, making sure that I translate those things and I'm code switching appropriately. I don't mean it to say that I would be disparaging in either language or to either person, but making sure that I understand what is considered something that they're sensitive about or they're not sensitive about, and honoring that, showing the respect for the person in front of me. I also love, Adrian, that you brought forward self-confidence. Being comfortable in my own body, my own skin, in my own knowledge of self, in my own intentions is super important. And I shouldn't apologize for being me. I do think it's important, though, inside of my social connections to apologize for the impact. So if I misstep and if I inadvertently offended either of you and you felt safe enough with me to share that, I would genuinely apologize for the impact of my behavior. And then I think it's important to slow down and seek to learn so that I don't repeat the offense, ensuring that the person that I want to have community with feels safe. Have either of you had similar experiences, or do the things I'm saying not resonate or resonate more or less? And I could say it differently, like something that I think is fun and joke around about, like you said, something I'm not very sensitive about, might be something that you're sensitive about or that Eren's sensitive about. And if I were to make an offhand comment and it offended you, I believe, appropriate for me to slow down and say, wait, explain to me why that's bothersome. How could I do better? What would be important to you? So I make sure I'm honoring you. Does that feel like something that you gentlemen bring to the table or have felt is important inside of the relationships you have?
I think you did great so far.
Oh, thank you, Eren. I appreciate that. And I honestly do mean it, whether it is at roundtables or inside of our community. If I ever misstep and I do something that upsets you, or
I'll make sure to explain it in a respectful manner.
and I promise that if I experience something that is unpleasant for me, I will do the same.
Hello, Rachel here. Would you like to share your own perspectives by participating in roundtables like this one? Join our online Global Autism Community, a safe and judgment-free space where all kinds of people connected to autism regularly discuss important topics. For example, we just had another roundtable about the impact of seasonal shifts on emotions, energy levels, and moods. And as each new month approaches, we vote on which theme to discuss next. Whether you want to participate in our next roundtable or just vote for your favorite topics, we'd love to hear your thoughts at community.globalautismproject.org. And now, back to the roundtable.
How do you feel, Adrian? Do you feel like inside of the relationships you've experienced mature ways of dealing with inadvertent offense in order to maintain the relationship?
When it comes to offense, I would just assume that the other person is just joking around in order to reveal that there is something that I do feel offended about. But in any kind of society, there's different cultures that exist, and there's different ways that everyone else just feels is appropriate, but it's just interpreted differently in another culture.
And culture is so interesting, right? Because it's not just our ethnicity, but there's cultures around age. You know, if we look at internet humor, there's all of this humor around different generations. There's culture around gender. There's culture around being a member of the LGBTQI plus community. There's culture around being neurodivergent. And so it can be really tricky to learn about cultures and therefore bring forward the things you want to. Earlier in the conversation, Adrian, you stated that throwing out a one-liner offers the opportunity to keep a conversation going. Are there some one-liners that you feel like drive conversation really well for you and that you kind of might be a go-to?
Oftentimes I do say excellent if someone says something that I like. That's one example of a one-liner and makes the other person feel good. And another thing is if someone's telling a story, then you can just point out a specific detail from that story that will indicate that you really were listening.
Mm-hmm.
And those are pretty much good examples of one-liners if you feel like you can't expand more on the conversation. But if you're just taking a piece of that conversation, then that will help conversations to grow even more.
I love that. I mean, a lot of us are looking for that social positive feedback, knowing that we are meeting the needs of those around us. And I think that that's part of being a social creature. I think we've spent a lot of time talking about the out-breath or the connection piece with others. What do you think are things that we could share with the Global Autism Project community about the importance of that slowing down? What are some things that you think maybe people don't notice about the importance of that self-time that you'd like to share or bring forward?
Self-time?
Yeah, so I call it being self-full. You know, oftentimes we can be accused of being selfish, like, oh, well, I need to do X, Y, or Z. You're being selfish. No, I'm being self-full by getting away into the mountains. This is good for me. Before I opened this meeting, I was down in a barn snuggling goats. because it makes me happy.
There's some happy goats then there with you.
So I'm actually at a goat rescue. I've come here for a couple of years in a row about this time of year, and it is something I look forward to after the summer and all of the busy activities. It's nice to slow down. I love being in nature, so it's restorative for me. It's a lot less demanding. I don't have my house and all of the demands of my everyday. So I have to do a little bit less, or I have to choose my hobbies a little bit more. And for me, those are all really beneficial. It lets me take a deeper breath. It lets me feel the season changing, which I'm very in touch with seasonal changes. It starts to settle my mind and let me kind of pull inwards for the winter and be a little bit more nurturing to my best friend and her family, my own personal family. I'm a homeschooler, so my intimate homeschool community. And this sort of helps me kind of get in touch with, it's like a good signal to my brain and to my emotions in my body. And I know I need that. Like I shared earlier, I don't always feel things when I'm very busy. Is there any benefits to your personal time that you think maybe the world or the Global Autism Project community maybe doesn't see?
One of my favorite things to do is basically lay my head back on my pillows, have the air conditioner be blasting plenty of cold air, shut the door, make sure I have no responsibilities to deal with, and just reflect, think.
Mm. Does your mind go to anything specific when you take that kind of time, or is it just freely letting your mind float and whatever comes to the surface happens?
The latter.
I love that.
I can stop having to focus on so many different things and I can just relax and think about what I need.
That makes a lot of sense.
Definitely a thing that I can share is that when I'm in my fortress of solitude, I usually like to listen to music while doing some exercises. And during that time, I imagine that I'm in my own kind of story. I go for some more adventure tactics, whether it be going on a rescue mission or I'm just having a good time partying it up. Even outside of that kind of fortress of solitude where I'm all by myself, I still feel a need to just be out in the open. And even if I'm not contributing much to conversation, I like to go into stealth mode and observe the world that's happening around me and observe how everyone is interacting so I'll know the best way to interact with those people as well. And it's a pretty good technique that I pretty much came up with. And I feel as though I don't always need to be the life of the party because at the same time, I'm studying off of everyone who is contributing to their own versions of life of the party. And from then on, I feel as though I can mirror off the right people so I'll know what mistakes to avoid for future preference. So,
oh wow,
pretty good deal
that's awesome. My husband's good at that. You say you came up with it. Was it hard for you to develop the habit of being more of an observer? So being in the social world and amid a bunch of people, but being slow enough to observe, or did that come pretty natural for you?
It came pretty natural to me as I aged more and I felt more comfortable in my own skin. It worked out pretty good and helps me feel confident with knowing what are good things to contribute in a community. I mean, one of my favorite things to observe is talk shows and sitcoms and seeing how interactions are played out in different types of community and how different kinds of humor and jokes are exchanged between one another. And I feel as though it's nothing to be ashamed of if you always have to feel constrained in a professional environment or environment that just seems professional. The important thing is that you're contributing in a society where everyone is building off one another. Exchanges are being done in the same way that the economy is.
That makes sense.
From that point on, it's just pretty good to just, practice exchanges of conversation as a model citizen.
I love that. Eren, do you have the ability to, as Adrian phrased it, go into stealth mode and be a social observer? I don't think that's a strength of mine. I'm so driven to engage.
While I do engage, I also have learned to take a step back. For example, I used to wear the most brightly colored clothing when I was younger and was also thinner. I'm trying to lose 70 pounds, but basically, I wasn't just in the spotlight, I was the spotlights.
Okay.
Right now that I'm in my 30s, I step back, I observe, I pay attention to what's going on, and then what I do is I engage if I see someone needing help, if I see somebody needing some assistance, if I see somebody feeling uncomfortable, that's where I step in. But for the most part, I step back, observe, and make sure that conversation flows. I've learned to work behind the scenes or to help oil the gears while stepping back and just helping be maintenance.
Oh my, that's amazing. And hearing you say that, it honestly gave me language around something that I do. Is I really am, like I said, I love networking people. I love being like, oh, this person and you have this in common, and you and this person have these similar strengths. And like it's very much something I enjoy. I don't think I would have called it going into stealth mode ever had I not heard that explanation, Eren. But that's often how I start to build community. I see someone who needs a thing. I can identify someone who looks uncomfortable, and I can soften my voice down on purpose and be like, hey, is there something I could do that's helpful? And it has given me access to so many people because, as Adrian said, I built that trusting relationship. I showed them that I was a safe person, and often, Eren, like you said, I did it publicly. I was in a park, or I was in a library, or I was in a homeschool class, so I didn't feel like they were in my personal space, or I was in theirs, and I wasn't governed by maybe some more stringent rules of culture or just the way they like to be in their own spaces. So I really appreciate both of you helping me to language around some of the things that I've done. Is there anything that either one of you want to bring forward about that give and take of connection and community building, or community maintenance, or community exchanging, and alone time, or fortresses of solitude? That is a fantastic phrase, Adrian. Or, those times where we do close, I also will close the door and blast the air conditioner. So, there's just times of breathing, of putting down all the work and all the responsibilities and all the demands, and just being who I am, how I am in that moment. Like, is there anything you really want to make sure is said out loud?
I would just say that if you got a bright mind, or you just have a mind that you just want to keep to yourself, there's no wrong way to do it. But if there's a perfect timing and we feel that you just want to express something, then you could just say it out loud. But if you want to see how the community is growing and you just want to step back, then the perfect thing to do is to just observe around you, and then you'll know exactly how that's done. And it's pretty good when you just step back into your own world, whether it's being alone or in isolation. But at least you're getting plenty of time to recharge up before going back into the social circle.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for the last hour. It's been an exceptional conversation, and I've genuinely enjoyed it. I thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I really look forward to where we end up taking next month's topic.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Thanks for tuning in to Autism Knows No Borders. Are you a self-advocate willing to share your story and educate others? Or a professional seeking to hear directly from autistic voices and improve your practice? Or maybe you're a family member hoping to support and empower your loved one. Whatever your connection to autism is, we'd love to hear your takeaways from this episode in our online Global Autism Community, where hundreds of people from all over the world come together to support each other and know that they're not alone. Join us today at community.globalautismproject.org. Let's work together to transform how the world relates to autism. Thanks for listening. Take care.